My name is Oliver, and I'm an alcoholic.
My name's John, and I'm an alcoholic.
My name is Mark, and I'm an alcoholic.
I'm Peter, and I'm an alcoholic. Very grateful, recovering alcoholic.
My name's Zoe, and I'm an alcoholic.
Rosie, and I'm an alcoholic.
I'm an alcoholic.
I'm an alcoholic.
I'm an alcoholic, and I'm very grateful to be here tonight and to be sober.
In my own case, my wife asked me to go to Alcoholics Anonymous because she saw, obviously she was living with the problem. I went really in the beginning just to please her, to get her off my back, to get my employers off my back. And it didn't work because I went for the wrong reason. But at the end of the day, going for the wrong reason opened the door for me, and eventually I stayed.
There's a barrier, a pain barrier, after which I was just not able to take any more mental or physical or spiritual pain. And that was the time when, I prayed for death. It was either death or stopping drinking.
To be a drinking alcoholic, only another alcoholic can understand it. The despair is just, it's unbelievable. It's, I know I've got a far greater understanding of myself and hopefully of others now. Because it's just impossible to describe the fears and the loneliness, and the whole life is ruined.
Other people say, where is your willpower? You've no willpower, you're weak-willed, you've got no backbone, or you would stop. This was said to me many, many times. Surely to God you can stop. There must be something, you're too weak-willed. They don't understand either. And until I got properly into Alcoholics Anonymous and found the fellowship and found other people thought and acted in exactly the same way as me, then I began to realize it.
I never wanted to come to AA. It was the last place I wanted to come. I never wanted to be an alcoholic. I didn't set out to be an alcoholic. And when I gradually began to realise that first I had a drink problem, and then the awful word alcoholic sort of crept through my mind, I tried to ignore it. And then when I couldn't ignore it any longer, I was terrified.
It is alcohol brought me down as low, I think, as any individual could possibly go.
I was introduced to this program of recovery. It's a live-in program. And for me, it wasn't easy. They never told me it'd be easy. They told me it'd be simple. They never said it would be easy. It took me quite some time to be able to accept that I was an alcoholic, and I'm an alcoholic. It's not enough for me to admit it. I have to accept it in my heart.
I didn't see any hope or any future. And when people started mentioning this Alcoholics Anonymous to me towards the end, when things got really bad, I thought, I'm not going there. I don't know what I thought it was like. I don't know what I thought. I thought it was some awful thing where everybody was really holier than thou, and somebody sat and preached at you and said, you mustn't drink and all this and that, and I just didn't want to come.
I thought I was the only person, especially in my position, who would actually steal from his own wife. Go into a purse and take money out. I thought there's nobody. I felt the lowest person there was for doing that. I was afraid to share that with anyone. I went to Alcoholics Anonymous and found out hundreds, thousands had done the same thing.
I came back to AA to listen, and a strange thing happened. I stopped drinking. And for me to stop drinking, it's a miracle, because I drank every day in, day out, every penny I had.
I have peace of mind today. I haven't got any fears. Fears of all sorts I had. Fears of people. Fears of going into work. Fears of finding out what I'd done, or what I hadn't done, or where I'd been, or who I'd been with. All those sort of things. But they're all gone today, and I don't need to worry about them either, because I know that they need never happen again. Because as long as I continue to come to these meetings...
For me, this is a day at a time. I admit that I'm powerless over alcohol. I can only live a day at a time, and sometimes I have to take it down to an hour at a time. But through the help of this fellowship, I'm learning how to live.
His wife had had a terrible time with him, and he went home and said, well, I've done something about my drinking at last, and he produced his literature from AA. She tore it up and threw it in the fire, said, it's bad enough with your drinking problem without being an alcoholic and going amongst that lot.
My name is Mark, and I'm an alcoholic. And a very warm welcome to this open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. Could we start in the usual way with a moment's silence to remember why we're here and to spare a thought for all alcoholics who are still suffering.
Bill had been trying to stay away from drink for a period of time, but he couldn't manage it, and he was on his own. And that was in America 50 years ago. And he met this doctor who had the same problem, but who couldn't stop drinking. And as a result of them two talking together, Bill, the first bloke, stayed sober, and Bob got sober. And that's all that happens when two alcoholics meet together, is that they understand each other, and they can stay sober together. And it's as simple as that.
And now perhaps Rosie will read the foreword, please.
Thank you, Mark. My name is Rosie, and I'm an alcoholic. AA's 12 steps are a group of principles, spiritual in their nature, which, if practiced as a way of life, can expel the obsession to drink and enable the sufferer to become happily and usefully whole. AA's 12 traditions apply to the life of the fellowship itself.
We have about 2,000 groups in this country at this present time. But as Nick has said, we don't keep membership records. And it will be inappropriate perhaps to even hazard a guess at the membership. We know that there are well over 1 million people throughout the world who have recovered through the program of this fellowship. And that's probably very much of an understatement.
My name is Peter, and I'm an alcoholic. 12 steps. 1. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5. Admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6. Were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7. Humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8. Made a list
The constant use of the word God, I rejected that completely. But today I do believe, but it's my own understanding of God. This is why it is not a religious body. We embrace many sects, religions. I've met Muslims, Hindus, Catholic, Protestant. It makes no difference. Atheists. Some people I know who have been members of this fellowship for many, many years, 20, 25 years, and still today profess to be atheists. So it's not a prerequisite. It helps, but it is not a prerequisite.
This was one thing which worried me when I came into AA. Was this thing going to be something alien to my beliefs? Not at all. It blends perfectly with my belief as a practicing Christian. And it will blend perfectly with the faith of a Muslim, or a Buddhist, or a Catholic, or a Protestant. It will blend with the whole lot. The program is so designed, it is purely spiritual, and it can be adapted to any form of formal faith as well. In fact, it strengthens, if you have a faith, it strengthens your faith. It did that for me. It made it meaningful.
The main thing was, at the end, I wanted to stop drinking. And I knew that Alcoholics Anonymous had something to offer, so I had to accept this.
We have this big book that was written, 45 years ago, and it says, no human power could relieve our alcoholism. Well, everything had happened to me. I mean, my wife had tried, the doctors had tried, psychiatrists had tried, police had tried, you name it, they'd all tried. I'd tried. But I couldn't stop. And I mean, every morning you sit there, I was sitting in the toilet like this and saying, I'm not going to drink. I'm definitely not going to drink today, and I daren't. And I go out of the house and get smashed because I couldn't stop. And it told me that I was powerless over alcohol, absolutely powerless. I've got no mental defence against the first drink. That's what I was told. And I didn't understand that. And so I had to depend on a power greater than myself. And for me it was the power of example of other people. Because other people who'd been in exactly the same position as me and said they couldn't stop were obviously stopped. They were a power greater than myself, and that would do for me. Simple. Wherever possible. Simple. Except when to do so would injure them or others. 10. Continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for the knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs.
The message is that a person can get sober and stay sober by practicing the 12 steps. And the 12th step, which says, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry the message to other alcoholics and to practice these principles in affairs. And this is the word of service. We call it in the fellowship 12th stepping. And to go out to 12-step someone merely means someone phones us, asks us for some help, and someone goes to see them.
My name's Mary and I'm an alcoholic. The 12 traditions. 1. Our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon AA unity. 2. For our group purpose there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants, they do not govern. 3. The only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking.
You were mentioning about the mention of God and things. These do become acceptable, palatable, as the attraction grows, as I began to realise how my life depended upon my acceptance of these principles.
I found it very difficult to give up alcohol at the beginning when I got about 9 months of sobriety. The first few months were difficult. But you see, in this fellowship, I believe, to make progress, a person, the desire to stop drinking has to be stronger than the desire to drink. And until a person makes up their mind, whether they want sobriety or not, well then they're on dodgy territory. I want to get what these people in these rooms have, and to get sobriety, and hospitals and psychiatrists and prisons, they didn't work for me.
It was the atmosphere, it was just the feeling from that room, that there was the answer. That was for me. And I was prepared. They suggest that you be prepared to go to any lengths to achieve sobriety.
Maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio and films. And 12. Anonymity is a spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities.
The 12th tradition, anonymity, is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to put principles before personalities. And in that way, on many occasions, this has stood the test of time. Although I can help people in their recovery, I can never stop anyone drinking. This is something that comes from the person themselves. And I have never been successful at all in stopping anyone. The only person I've been successful with up until today has been myself. I have never been able to get anyone at all sober. I can speak to them, I can tell them of my own case history, how it was for me and how it is today, but that is as far as it goes. And for anyone to look to me or to anyone in the fellowship and think, that's what I want to be, that doesn't work at all. So again, it's always put principles before personalities.
The thing that first appealed to me when I came to the fellowship was the fact that it was a 24-hour program, and I was told any fool can keep sober for 24 hours, and that appealed to me because I was very much of a fool in those days, or at least I thought I was. However, I'm sure that others here would now like to share upon this, so the meeting is now open. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I'm Rosie, and I'm an alcoholic. And I too am very grateful to be here tonight. I knew that I was very sick and was suffering terrible from the effects of booze, but just didn't know what to do about it. I'd certainly reached my rock bottom. I'd become that I was so very much ashamed of myself, with the disgrace to my family and to myself. I just couldn't even stand to look at myself in a mirror even. Eventually then I was to be guided to Alcoholics Anonymous. I have not picked up that drink since. And so it works for us in all different ways. I went through a lot of meetings, and just after I'd been in the fellowship a few months, I was taken along by a certain AA lady to a meeting at one of our open prisons. And there I heard a lady sharing that afternoon, which was just as if she was talking and telling my story. And going home, I kept thinking to myself, what a fortunate person I was, that I had not ever ended up inside. And it made me more than ever try to help. I became involved then and became a prison sponsor. And during this time now, I visit different prisons and try to help out wherever I can. And for me, I find that this has worked for me. It's wonderful. As a matter of fact, I've only been somewhere this afternoon with another AA member, and it was lovely, a beautiful day, and we could go in the car and have a laugh and have a cup of tea, and we both realised that life can be so wonderful for me today now through Alcoholics Anonymous.
Thank you very much indeed, Rosie. I'm sure someone else would now like to contribute.
My name's John and I'm an alcoholic, and I courted drink and drink courted me, and it blossomed into a tremendous relationship. Drinking became part of my identity. Drinking was very much John, very much with me. My life began to revolve around it, lunchtimes and evenings. First of all socially, but later on, as I did become chemically dependent on it, I took to drinking alone, which is something that I do identify with so much of these meetings. The fact that anything that's happened in my life has happened to other people. This is what I found in the meetings, and gradually I found that through my drinking, life became a conspiracy. Relationships broke up. I lost jobs, and in the end, I ended up where I lost the use of my legs. I didn't know what my name was. I was bedridden, just lying in wet beds. I was totally defeated. I was completely chronic and absolutely hopeless alcoholic. I would lie in my wet bed and pray to die. So as a final resort, my doctor suggested that I should try perhaps Alcoholics Anonymous. He had heard that it did help in certain cases. I had very vague notions about AA, didn't know what to expect. And I identify with everybody who has come over this threshold and anybody who's hovering, perhaps waiting to come in, because I did hover and I had a lot of misgivings, but I did get sufficient vodka on board to get on a bus and go to meet a member of AA. And I was taken to my first meeting, and I was absolutely amazed by what I found. In AA, they didn't laugh at my shaking hands. They gave me some literature to take, and they were very encouraging. They said, come back, just do it a day at a time, and eat chocolate, polish shoes, keep myself occupied. I bathed 3 times a day for weeks and weeks and weeks, and polished everything in the house, took all the lampshades off and got the house thoroughly spring cleaned, all the carpets, and it sounds a bit pathetic, but I was a very sick person, and they encouraged me to treat myself as a sick person, to do it gently, a day at a time, do small things, keep myself occupied, because drink had become a total obsession. It was all that I knew about, all I had in my life, and to remove it like that was quite a shock.
My name's Mary, and I'm an alcoholic. Just listening to everybody share makes me realise how very grateful I am to be here and to be sober. I'm grateful for where I am today, because for a long time I didn't know where I was or who I was. and I was frightened of my own shadow, of my own self, let alone anything else. I had terrible fears, and I didn't realise it was because of my drinking. I was so alone, I was so frightened. And one of the terrible fears I had was of the telephone, which seems quite stupid really, but if I was in the house with my parents, I'd try and hang it off the hook so it wouldn't ring. If they were out, it was great because I could just have it off the hook. I was frightened about who would ring me and what they'd ring about, and they'd ask me if I was well and and had I found a job and all sorts of terrible, awful things, and I was terrified out of my wits. And when I'd been in this fellowship for not so very long, somebody asked me to go and help as a telephone operator on the telephone service here in Leeds. I said, I can't. I said, I wouldn't know what to say to anybody. I'd be absolutely useless. And this person very kindly explained that I would go with somebody who'd been doing it for a while, and I just listened for a bit, and gradually I'd work my way into it. And today I'm very grateful that I was encouraged to do that, because it has helped me a lot. And we're very fortunate in this area to have a telephone service.
My name is Oliver, and I'm an alcoholic. When I came to this fellowship completely beaten with booze, I thought all I had to do was lay down the drink, and everything then would get back to normal and my life would be all right. But when I arrived at AA, I found it just wasn't as easy as that. I came along, I laid down the drink, I did nothing else, I remained dry for a short period of time, and I started to drink again. I did this on numerous occasions, till eventually I'd had enough. And I began to listen to what was being said to me at the meetings. I discovered the 12 steps were there to help me to change my attitude towards people, to accept the other things in my life that were going wrong. And by doing all these things and looking at those steps, I began to realize I had to change. And this is what we talk about in recovery through the 12 suggested steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And the first of these I'd like to repeat, because without this acceptance, I found that I could get nowhere. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol and that our lives had become unmanageable. And my life was certainly unmanageable, although I wouldn't accept that at the beginning. Completely and utterly unmanageable. And I was completely and powerless over alcohol, because on the various occasions that I'd tried to stop and tell myself I'll only have one, I'll only have two, it was no good. It would last a week or a fortnight and bang, I was back again. And they told me there was the first drink that did the damage. I'd never thought of it that way. I'd always thought it was the drink, the last one at the bottom of the bottle. If I hadn't taken that last drink, everything would have been fine. I would have been all right. But it wasn't the last one, it was the first one, because the first one set off a chain reaction in me with my makeup, my metabolism, where I just did not know where to stop. So coming along, looking at those steps, looking at my own character defects, of which I had many, trying to do something about them with the aid and the help. The other things that went with the booze, such as my personal downfall, the lack of funds, trouble in the home, trouble at work, financial state was absolutely catastrophic. And I can look back and smile at it all now, because through staying sober and leading a different type of life, I managed to put my house in a bit of order. So that is the recovery part of the program, all based on the 12 steps. That is our recovery, and it's my recovery. And I'm very, very grateful for that, because I have been able to change myself. I've never been able to change my character as such, but I've been able to change my attitude towards other people. You see, I had it all wrong. I thought if perhaps, all the things that I said were wrong in my drinking days. It was my job, it was my wife, it was my family, it was all sorts of things that were wrong, but I was never wrong. I was always right. And through looking at myself, through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, I have been able to understand that it was me in the main that was wrong, and I've been able to put an awful lot right in my life. Certain things I haven't been able to change yet, but I have a whole lifetime to work on it. And this was it, one day at a time. I did not need to take a drink. Providing I didn't drink today and lived a reasonable life today, tomorrow would take care of itself. And it has been absolutely marvellous to date.
I'm an alcoholic, and I'm very grateful to be here tonight and to be sober. I was introduced to this fellowship 12 years ago back in Ireland, and I went to it somewhat reluctantly. I went to the meetings for about 6 weeks, once one day a week, but I hadn't any real interest in the meetings because I felt that I was too young, and I didn't really, I couldn't really admit that I was an alcoholic. 18 months ago I came back in, and I was a very depressed man when I came in. I kept coming for about 6 months, and I played around with AA. We were told in this fellowship not to play around with it, to either go out and drink or else to come in and listen. But unfortunately I had to play around with it. But about 9 months ago I came back to AA to listen, and a strange thing happened. I stopped drinking, and for me to stop drinking, it's a miracle, because I drank every day, day in, day out, every penny I had, and I stopped drinking for almost 9 months, and that was a miracle. I know the reason I stopped was through the power of God as I understand Him, and the help of this fellowship, Alcoholics Anonymous, and the people in it. They've helped me a terrible lot. But that wasn't to be the end for me. I got very complacent. The big ego returned, and I got very materialistic, and I got my priorities all mixed up. On 3 occasions at 13-day intervals, as it just happened to be 13-day intervals, I got drunk, and the last drink that I had, I was very depressed, spiritually empty, and I didn't know where to go. But once again, a member of this fellowship came to my aid and carried me, or drove me, to an AA meeting, because my courage was gone, and the empty pride, you know, that always stopped me from admitting that I was an alcoholic. I had to bury my head and come back into the meeting. But you see, once I came into the meeting, the people in these rooms welcomed me with open arms. That's just a month ago. And I've had about a week of serenity, something I never had in my life. Great peace of mind. To learn to live, I need to keep coming to these meetings and to stay away from that first drink one day at a time. And I need everyone in these rooms. And thank you, and I'm grateful to be here tonight and to be sober.
As I say, I'm Peter, and I'm an alcoholic. Very grateful recovering alcoholic today. The thing I understand today that I certainly didn't some time ago is that there's no cure for this disease that I have. There's no cure at all for it. I came into this fellowship on my 2 legs. I didn't stagger in, I didn't crawl in, I wasn't carried in, I walked in. I sat down, disgusted with myself, I suppose, and listened to people talk about me and how I felt. That's what I remember about my first meeting, how these people felt. Because I never knew that anybody ever felt the way I did. How terribly lonely I'd felt throughout many, many years of drinking 7 days a week, destructive, criminal activity, things like that. And I thought that there was only one meeting in this part of the world, you know. And it came as quite a shock to me to find that there were about 40 or 50 meetings a week. This is a life-changing program. I didn't know what was going to be on offer. I had no idea what was going to happen. No idea. All I knew was that I didn't want to drink anymore. I wanted to get well. And found that my life changed beyond all recognition. All recognition. Where there was hate, there's now some love in our house.
Now I'm going to pass the pot around, and when we've done that, we'll close the meeting, as usual, with a serenity prayer. And perhaps, Oliver, you would lead us in the serenity prayer.
Could we just stand? Using the word God as you understand it. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Thank you.
Amen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It might be appropriate to mention at this particular time that anyone with a drinking problem only has to telephone Leeds 454-567 any evening, Sundays included, between 7 and 10. And another alcoholic will be at the other end of the phone and happy to talk to anybody about their problems. That might be just an initial first step.
People said to keep coming to the meetings and to stick with the winners.
Recovery for me is something that's full of joy. Full of joy. I can do things today that I could never do before. I know that the only thing that I can't do is pick up a drink. That's the only thing that I cannot do. And that isn't such a bad thing for me, because it would kill me if I did.
I thought at that time that perhaps I could stop drinking, but that I didn't really believe I could be happy. You know, I thought, okay, perhaps, life can go on, but I'll never be happy again. And all these people said, you will be happy. And gradually it came, and that, as people have said, it really is a miracle, because for anybody, who's drinking, we all know here, you really do think you've hit the bottom.
I've got a little daughter. She never knew me sober at all, first 4 or 5 years of her being on this planet. But today she comes, and I walk through the door at home, and she comes and she puts her arms out and, Dad, give us a kiss. That's great, that is. That for me is